Need motivation? Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 to 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 to 9. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because chances are you are the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Tom Bilyeu, and my take on his top 10 rules to success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1, believe in your passion.
The number one question I get, and I get this question so much you can't imagine, how do I find my passion? The good news is, passion is not something that's handed to you. It is not a lightning bolt moment. It's another nice, simple mathematical equation. First of all, you need to identify your areas of interest. Everybody's interested in something. And I find the big problem is people stop themselves because they say, yeah, well, the thing that I'm interested in couldn't possibly be a business. So let's take video games back in the 80s. Back when everybody thought that video games were a joke, you're ruining your brain, it's like intellectual candy, kids get off the computer, go play outside, Nintendo's a joke, it's ridiculous. And then we have an entire industry now that's born up around video games that has made untold numbers of millionaires. I met one of the founders of Riot Games that created League of Legends. The guy's like, I don't know, 31, maybe younger, I mean, just crazy. They do $1 billion in revenue from microtransactions of things that are not essential to play the game. The game is totally free to play. You don't need to pay for anything. Imagine that for a second. You're in an industry where they don't need to buy anything to get full use of your game, and yet you do over $1 billion in revenue because they said, I love this. I like being around games. I like the competition of it. I think it's amazing. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to be inventive. I'm going to look for areas to add value. And so they have. And more people now watch esports, the finale of League of Legends, than watch the finales, I think, of all major sports combined. It's crazy. They fill arenas. It's absolutely bonkers. But that was somebody who said, this is something I love. It's something I want to be around. It is an area of interest. And I don't care if other people tell me that it can't be a business. It's what I want to be around. With enough ingenuity and enough forethought into what actually can be a business, because some things can't, you can really do something with something that's an interest. All right, so an interest, you need to gain mastery in it. During the process of gaining mastery, you'll find out whether you actually like that thing enough to become great at it. It is my belief, whatever it is you set out to do as a business, there should be one litmus test. You should be able to ask and affirmatively answer the following question. Do I want to know more about this than anyone else in the world? Don't get into something unless you plan to be the best. That's my piece of advice. I know that's not going to sit well with everybody. But if you want to have the passion to make something big, to make big change, it's got to be something that you believe in beyond reasonable doubt. It's got to be something you've just got to make happen. So ask yourself, do I want to know more about this than anyone else? Because you're going to have to get better at it than anyone else if you want to be excellent and deliver on the promise.
Rule number 2, use the power of habits.
There are very concrete habits that you can use, that I have used. Once you get your mind in the right place, once you believe that it can happen, this is what I did. I worked out. Why? Because it helped me gain control of my mind. 1, it was micro-credibility with myself every day. I said I was going to do something, I did it. 2, when you're suffering and you're willing to fight through it, you tell yourself a story that you're willing to pay the price to become what you want to become. And also, and this may be the most important reason each and every one of you should start working out, and it has nothing to do with living longer, because we could get hit by a meteorite, who knows? So I'm not even worried about that, but I am worried about this. When you watch your body transform, you get the loudest signal from your subconscious that you can change anything you want, that you can change your bicep, your tricep, your quad, whatever it is that you want. Something that you literally could not do the day before, you can do today. And your mind sees that that's true. Your mind sees that something you couldn't pick up yesterday, you can pick up today. And it begins to ask itself, well, if that's possible, then what else is possible? Now, for me, finding my center was also a very important thing. So I work out first. The next thing I do without fail is meditate. I do a just breathe meditation where I'm simply trying to calm my mind. Then I do what I call thinkitating. During meditating, I get into an alpha wave state brain pattern, which enhances creativity and unique connections. I'm not worried about whether I'll ever think a unique thought. I am simply interested in the unique connections that I will make that no one else before me or after me will ever make, because their circumstances are different than mine. And that, to me, is what makes each of us a beautiful snowflake. Is we're all going to make connections that other people might not make. And so during thinkitating, I take advantage of a problem I'm trying to solve. I smash it together with my alpha wave state, and I see what comes out of it. I read obsessively, because I believe in one simple math equation: ideas in equal ideas out. And then I keep a list of the most important things I'm trying to accomplish. If you're trying to become something, you need to know what that something is.
Rule number 3, find your why.
You don't get skills because it looks good on a resume. You get skills because it lets you do the thing you want to do. So let's use sports as an example. It's just all too easy not to use it. So if you're in poverty and you're Lionel Messi and you realize, actually, I think, who's the other one?
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo, thank you. He was in the grips of poverty. And nice, that's perfect. So Cristiano Ronaldo, in the grips of poverty, realizes that playing soccer is a way out for him. And so he goes and gets the skills. Why? Because if he can win on the soccer field, then he can actually elevate his family out of poverty. Like when you see that trail, it goes back to the Nietzsche quote. If you have a why, you can survive almost any how. So how am I going to get there? The amount of work that Cristiano Ronaldo has put in to become one of the greatest, if not the greatest football player of all time, it's inhuman. Anybody else would look at it and say, nope, not willing to do that. And fair enough. But it was somebody who said, if I gain these skills, it will let me dribble around people, score when other people can't score, galvanize a team around me, leverage it to be wanted by teams, to turn into financial resources, to make me famous so that I can get brand deals and things like that. All the things that he would need to do to pull himself out of poverty. Like this stuff isn't an accident. It's about skill acquisition. So there's another kid that had the same dream. I'm going to use soccer to get me out of poverty, and did nothing about it. Therefore did not have the skills, therefore could not elevate their family out of poverty, and looks at it like, well, this is all circumstance. It's not circumstance. It's cause and effect. It's how much energy do you put into actually gaining the skills, and did you gain them? Or did you just put in the energy and the effort thinking that should be enough to gain it, but you didn't actually gain them? Mm-hmm. So this is what, it's like the gift I want everybody to receive is you can get good at anything you set your mind to. But do you actually set your mind to it? Do you have that inhuman level of follow through? Do you keep pushing and fighting long after it stopped being fun, deep into boredom, because you have a why? You know why you're doing what you're doing, and you're just driving towards that. And when you have that, you can accomplish this extraordinary stuff. But I really think people now are doing it for the gram. You're doing it for the gram. You want to go to that thing and do it because it's like, oh, this is going to look good on my gram. And look, I've done that 100 times. I get it. But at the core of my existence is not that. At the core of my existence is I'm going to, in the amount of time that I have, I'm going to be acquiring skills.
Rule number 4, do whatever it takes.
I've always said that the most sinister thing about excuses is that they're real. Like you really do have reasons not to be successful, but now what? Like now what? Now what are you going to do? Like I remember I was giving a talk at Google, and one of the guys happened to be African American, and he said, "Tom, do you think it's harder for me as a black person in America to succeed?" And I said, "That seems patently self-evident, even just accepting that humans tend to gravitate towards those that look like them, what I call the school of fish phenomenon. You always see the same kind of fish with the same kind of fish. So being a minority, just by definition, is going to make things harder. But now what? Like, now you can take that excuse and give yourself an out to not try, to not get started, which is something you talk a lot about. Or you can say, regardless of that, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get where I want to go." All right, what is up, everybody? I want to talk to you about my good friend Evan Carmichael's book right here, Built to Serve. I'm actually going to read you a section. There are some amazing parts to this book, and this is one of my favorite
It's under the title, Comfort is the Enemy of Greatness. And it goes, when you're comfortable, you don't get strong. When you have plenty of fresh air and no adversity, you crumble as soon as something gets hard. It's rarely the kids of rich parents who go on to do great things, even though they have all the advantages that money, connections, and education can buy. Why is that? Because they're too comfortable. People who are comfortable don't create great things. There it is. Evan Carmichael bringing the heat in his book, Built to Serve. Get a copy.
Rule number 5, develop grit.
If you haven't read Angela Duckworth's book on grit, I highly recommend it. It is amazing. I'll give you some of the key takeaways. The biggest part about grit is sustained effort over time. If you lose interest quickly in something, once or twice, no big deal. It is what it is. You realize that it wasn't your thing. But if you lose interest over and over and over and over and over, and you always only enjoy the first 6 months of a business, and then you want to move on, you lose interest very quickly, you need to work on developing your grit, being able to sustain that over time. Because building any business, you're going to encounter hard things. You need to be able to do those hard things, focusing on the hard things. In fact, I try to start every day with one of the hardest things, to get it out of the way, to remind myself that I'm willing to attack that. All right, you want to be able to persist through boredom and suffering. I told you guys that's one of my superpowers. Long after everybody else gives up because they're not having fun anymore, I'm still there banging away at it. That's really, really important in order to create momentum, to keep things moving, and to finally get them across the finish line. A lot of people are able to get something to the 50-yard line or maybe even the 1-yard line, but they just can't quite push it over the finish line. And that is the difference between somebody who's a wantrepreneur and somebody who ends up being successful the way that they want. They can get it across the finish line. All right, learn to tell the difference between a lack of grit and genuine disinterest. If you're not interested in something, you need to move on quickly. But like I said, if that becomes serial, you may have a problem. And if you're only good in the beginning, that's the sign that you lack grit.
Rule number 6, execute.
Only execution matters. Burn that into your nervous system. Get a tattoo. Do whatever you need to do to remind yourself, only execution matters. Thinking about it, feeling good about it, those are awesome. But if you have a vision of something you're trying to do, become, whatever, and you don't execute against it, and I don't need you to want to build a big business. If you tell me you want to be the greatest parent of all time, then I'm going to ask you, what are you doing to execute on that goal? What are you doing? How do you define it? What are your deliverables? What are the metrics by which you're judging yourself? And by the way, if you don't want a grand goal, you don't need one. But then say, what I'm trying to do is get centered. I'm trying to experience happiness. Even that, you can begin to look at ways that you can improve that. Now, I very much subscribe to the theory that the human animal is an active species, meaning it will forever be moving forward. I think that's a good thing. It's one of the most exciting things in my life. And I have 3 fears. 1, brain damage. That freaks me out. 2, losing my wife because, damn, that woman's cool. And then 3, I don't ever want to feel like I've hit the end of what I can do. I always want to feel like there's something more that I can learn and grow into. So keeping in mind, execution is how you get there no matter what your path is.
Rule number 7, realize that you can change.
What is that mindset of constantly working on yourself without judging yourself to a deeper level, without doing it in a way that always pulling you down, but always pushing you up? And you're doing that in your relationship. Whenever I watch relationship theory, I think the conversations you and Lisa have, incredible. So it seems like you're doing it in all areas of your life. Which area did it start in? Which areas did it evolve to? Let's just break that whole...
Yeah, so let's answer that question.
Yeah.
So where did it start and where did it go? So the honest answer is that, like many of the most amazing things in my life, they were born of misery. And I was deeply and profoundly unhappy, dissatisfied with who I was, what I was capable of, where I was in life, all of it. I was just really unhappy about it. Now, the one good thing is I've always met things like that with, and what can I do? And I have a bias towards action. And then I've cultivated that bias towards action, which is how it's gotten extreme and is permeated into every area of my life. Okay, so it starts with it's this dark place. This, like I said, I failed in film school. I didn't fail in film school. I graduated second in my class. But there was a failure that was so emotionally catastrophic that everybody else would have been like, oh, you got a B. Like, what's the problem? Sure, I got a B in the class, but I didn't walk away with a thesis film that I could use to get a job as a filmmaker. So for me, it was like, whoa, I just lost massively. So I'm, in this very dark place. I'm broke as the day is long. I can't afford furniture. I literally sit on the floor in my unfurnished apartment like that. Just it's a normal phase that people go through, but then put on top of that I'm feeling down and stuck, like I don't know where I'm going to go. Propensity towards action kicks in. I start reading. I'm learning about the brain, figuring out how much of this can I change. I realize I can change it. And then that change felt so good. And even let's do a thought exercise. This is for people listening because you're already there. But for anybody listening, and you're listening to Jay because you want to get there, you see something, which by the way, you feel when you're with him, it is real. And I love that about you. But like this sense of peace, like the normal slings and arrows of life, he's found a way to deal with. I won't say that he doesn't have them, but he's found a way to deal with it. And that's what you're looking for. So going into that, it's like, if you are in a dark place and you hear change is real, change is possible, doesn't that lift your mood? Don't you want that to be true? And once you allow it, because you have to allow it, once you allow that to lift your mood and you're like, I feel better just by thinking I can change. That was huge for me. That was like moment one, was when I realized I actually can change. So this thing that feels like a death threat, this like smothering cloud of just like despair, it can clear away. And it immediately, and it's not like, oh, it went from gray skies to blue skies. It wasn't that immediate, but it literally immediately a lighter load just because I realized I can change. So I was like, whoa, I can change. None of this is a death sentence. That's so like just amazing. That was enough to get me going. And people are always looking for, how do I have the energy? I'm depressed. I'm down on myself. How do I get the energy to push through? Man, you've got to find a way to find energy in that. You can change. So whatever position you're in right now, you can change no matter what it is, no matter how horrific, no matter what you've been through, no matter what you've done. Like there is a way out from under it. But part of it is allowing that sense of lightness to be there. So I allowed it.
Rule number 8, build your self-esteem.
The important thing here to note is that everyone needs an ego. Everyone needs self-esteem. Everyone needs to feel good about themselves. And the crazy thing, when you really stop and think about suicide, and this is a new obsession of mine, if you stop and think about suicide, what has happened? That person believes, falsely, but they believe that they'll never be happy again, that they'll never feel good about themselves again. And that's why it's referred to as a permanent solution to a temporary problem, because that will pass. But in that moment, it feels like it couldn't ever go away. So we need to find things that make us feel good about who we are. Because when you lose a sense of feeling good about who you are, life truly feels hopeless. So that's critical. And people often talk about, to stay away from an ego, to not pride yourself on things. But I'm telling you, that person prides themselves on not having an ego. And so it becomes what you pride yourself on is absolutely incredible. Now, don't make the mistake that I made. I used to want to be smart. When I talked about being the king of remedial jobs, it was because I wanted to put myself in situations where I was the smartest person in the room. And in doing that, I was always going into smaller and smaller rooms. But it felt so good to be right. And the problem was I was wrong a lot of the times. Now, when this one finally came to a head, my business partners, who were far smarter than I am in terms of IQ, processing data, which I define IQ as your ability to process data rapidly. They could process data very rapidly. And we would get into arguments and I would always lose, and it was very frustrating. And I remember one day, finally, I actually convinced them to do something my way. And I realized, oh, I just won the argument, but I know I'm wrong. And so now what? I've gotten what I thought I wanted. I finally won this victory. If I don't feel smart myself, at least I'm getting reflected back to me that I've solved the problem. And now I feel totally stuck. Because if I really want to move towards my goal of getting rich, it does not help to do things that I know are against the company just to be right. And in that moment, I realized what I had to do was switch my self-esteem from being right to pursuing the right answer faster than anyone else. And then putting energy behind that and being like, oh my gosh, Timmy came up with the idea, or it was Sally, and Sally, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And giving them so much energy to try to see it through because that's the right idea. And then I began to develop my reputation of being the guy that even if 3 seconds before that I'd been fighting for another idea, once I realized I was wrong, I would admit it. And it's amazing what reputation you can build around that. And it is way more effective for business.
Rule number 9, meditate.
What is the meditation process specifically look like?
Dead simple. So I use what I call just breathe. So it was born of Mark Divine's box breathing. At least he was the one that introduced it to me. So he preaches do it 4 equal parts. So you've got the inhale is the exact same length as the inhale hold, exact same length as the exhale, exact same length as the exhale hold. Now doing that made me feel out of breath. I just felt weird. So what I started doing was I'm going to maximize the pleasure in each part of the breath cycle. So for me, it happens to be a sort of medium inhale, a very short inhale hold, a rapid exhale. I just let the air out. And then a very prolonged exhale hold. Mm-hmm. And that rhythm feels awesome. And I do that for 10 or 15 minutes and I can get into an alpha wave state. I feel calm, creative. It just feels awesome. That's one of those things that people that haven't tried meditation or tried it but never got to the part where it feels awesome, my heart breaks for them. It is a tool I rejected for so many years because it felt wussy to me. And remember, I'm the guy that had to learn to toughen up. So I feared that was like backwards momentum. And so finally, when Mark Divine looked at me and was basically like, stop being an idiot and try this. And he's like this tough ass Navy SEAL. Yeah. I thought, all right, I'm going to try. And then it changed my life.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is find your driver.
I switched my self-esteem from being right and being smart to being the learner who was always willing to admit that he was wrong, identify the right answer, give credit to the person who thought of it, and put more energy behind it than anyone else. And that became my driver. Now, what did I do with that driver? I turned that change in attitude, along with my co-founders at Quest Nutrition, into building, as Vishen said, the second fastest growing company in North America, valued at over $1 billion. Every financial dream I'd ever had in my life come true. But at the end of the day, the only thing that mattered had nothing to do with the money. And it had everything to do with, we set out to build a business around value creation. We set out to actively ask one question: what would we do and love every day, even if we were failing? And that, for 3 very different reasons, ended up being attacking the pandemic of the body, trying to help people live a more beautiful life. And there were times where putting that value first meant that we did things that were less profitable. There were times where we put that value first and it was outright stressful to the company. But that was the driver. And that was the thing that actually allowed us to grow, because people could feel that this company was different. They could feel that we weren't after the sale. They could feel what we wanted was to help. And in today's world, leading with that, as you guys know, if you're at this conference, can have tremendous rewards.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video? And what is your specific plan of action for the next week? When you just watch a video and get motivated by it, you have a 35% chance of following through. But when you get motivated and then create a specific plan of action, you have a 91% chance of following through. That's what we do here, Believe Nation. We get motivated, but then we do something about it. And when you commit to other people, you increase your chances even further of following through. So, what was your biggest takeaway from this video? And then what is your plan of action around it for this week? Put it down in the comments below, because I want to celebrate you.
If you're trying to march down a path of self-improvement without clarity, without a terrifying level of clarity, you're never going to make it. So start there. What do you want exactly? What skill, what trait, what ability, what belief, what are you trying to make yours? So once you identify that.
Notice he did not say a thing there. Like you said, right? Like you said, what ability, what trait, what quality. You didn't ever say what house, what car.
Lambo,
yeah, right. It's important.
Yeah,
because I think that's too much. I mean, when I remember first getting yourself, sorry to cut you off.
Please.
I'm saying this because I think it's such an important point that you made, that you did not let that word even come into a list, and you named like 7 things and it didn't come in. Because when I started self-improvement, so much of what I heard in the West was always about a vision board of having stuff. And it was like, put a picture of that ideal house, put a picture of that car. And I've always struggled with that. Always struggled with that being the object of obsession. So I'm glad you didn't bring it up. And you can carry on or go on that or whatever.
Yeah, well, part of it is because I certainly don't want to be disingenuous. Like, there are also material things that I chase and am inspired by and all that, for sure.
Sure,
I just
me
come
too,
at it
yeah.
from a like, what's the skill that I'm going to need? Even if that ultimately is where I want to get, it's like all of that stuff people will find. And God, I hope people have heard this 1,000 times. It's so transient. It is never going to fulfill you, right? But it's still fun. Go ahead, chase it, have fun. Like, I get it. But you will ultimately come back to something more meaningful, for sure. So once you know what you want, you have that level of clarity. Now it's about, okay, where am I in that? And that's where it requires that you have self-awareness to know where you are in developing that skill.
If you want 10 more awesome rules from Tom Bilyeu, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
Have you seen Fight Club?
Yeah.
All right, there's a part in Fight Club, and the gift that I would like to give the world, if I had, which I did not, but if I had sat down